For regular videos on ancient cultures and forgotten civilizations, please subscribe.
I was just listening to my voicemails. Here's one you may find interesting, and which I will answer.
Hi, Dr. Miano. I was just calling to ask about the dating methods that historians use, especially ancient historians like yourself. Thanks for all your hard work. I enjoy your videos. Bye.
Yes. In a previous video, I answered a question about methods of dating that archaeologists use. And at the end, I mentioned that there are other methods of dating also at our disposal that are done outside of archaeology, which also are of assistance in placing events in the stream of time. So, as I promised, I will walk you through these. Thank you for the question. The first, and the one that I myself specialize in, is historical chronology. This is done by historians who work mainly with written documents. Studying calendars and working out historical chronologies from documents is a key resource for understanding the past and can be extremely useful for archaeological research. Before the advent of scientific dating methods in the early 20th century, history and archaeology relied heavily on calendars and chronologies established by ancient civilizations. And these dating methods still hold immense value today. In the ancient world, literate societies documented their own history through written records, such as the lists of successive kings in Egypt, the Near East, China, organized into dynasties. They also kept contemporary records. Artifacts can also carry dates or the names of rulers that can be dated. Many Maya ceramics, for example, bear hieroglyphic inscriptions. Coins from the Roman and medieval periods of Europe typically carry the name of the ruler, and inscriptions or records elsewhere often allow the ruler to be dated. However, it's important to note that dating an artifact is not the same as dating the context in which it was found. The date on the artifact may indicate the year it was made, but its inclusion in a sealed archaeological deposit only establishes a minimum age for the deposit, not the exact date. Now, of course, much has not survived, and we have to distinguish primary from secondary sources and treat them appropriately. See my video on the basics of the historical method. But by using written records, such as letters, annals, official documents, and historical chronicles, historians can establish a timeline of events and determine the dates of those events. This information is critical in establishing a historical context for archaeological sites and artifacts, and in providing a chronological framework for interpreting the results of other dating methods. For example, historical chronologies can provide important information about the political, economic, and social events that took place during a specific period, which can then be used to help us understand how these events may have influenced the use and occupation of a particular site, or the creation and distribution of specific artifacts. The use of historical chronologies in archaeology is essential when ample artifacts are found that can be closely linked to it. For instance, in major Maya sites, such as Tikal and Copan, there are numerous stelae with calendrical inscriptions that can be used to date the buildings associated with them. A well-established historical chronology in one country can be used to date events in neighboring and more distant lands that lack historical records, but are mentioned in the records of the literate homeland. In countries with a reliable calendar and significant literacy, historical methods remain the most important way to date events, even for archaeologists. However, where the calendar or its correlation with the modern calendrical system is uncertain, other absolute dating methods can be used to check the correlations. Outside of literate lands, cross-dating and typological comparisons have been largely replaced by scientifically based dating methods. This now allows all cultures around the world to be assigned absolute dates. If you'd like to see me do videos that take deep dives into specific chronologies, let me know. Another important dating method is linguistic dating. In the field of historical linguistics, it is possible to reconstruct the linguistic past using information from present-day languages and historically known languages, as a basis. In other words, it is possible to work out a language family tree and from this determine when specific languages made their appearance on the world scene. Archaeological research materials very frequently have an absolute chronology in years, but linguistic shifts, changes, and vocabulary layers can, in most cases, only be dated relatively, in relation to other shifts, changes, and layers. Notwithstanding considerable differences in methodologies and research materials, the results of linguistics have often been employed together with history and archaeology to create a coherent narrative of the past. A goal in all these disciplines is to reconstruct large-scale social models of past human groups, their complex interaction, and the change of such actors in time and space. Knowledge about the past of populations acquired through linguistic studies also can be correlated with anthropological and genetic knowledge. It must be emphasized, however, that there's not necessarily a direct correlation between language and culture or between language and a genetic group. Yes, generally speaking, parents pass on language to their children, but this is not a hard and fast rule, so the establishment of direct correlations between linguistic findings and archaeological, genetic, ethnobotanical, and anthropological findings has to be done with great caution, avoiding extrapolations not corroborated by other disciplines. The historical linguistic record cannot safely be read without the complementary perspectives of the other disciplines, which historical linguists sometimes overlook. Then we have genetic dating. DNA has transformed from being a specialized science to a central topic in discussions about identity, culture, and politics, not only in the present, but in the distant past. Skeletons are a direct link to individuals from the past. Biological anthropologists, for example, have long studied bones and teeth for information about people's origins and their lives. However, by examining DNA, geneticists are now able to gain a deeper understanding and more information about these people, including chronological information. The extraction of ancient DNA, what we call aDNA, from archaeological skeletons is leading to the reshaping of historical narratives due to the new information it provides about ancient human migration and interaction. Although the science of aDNA is relatively new, significant advancements have been made since the publication of the first fully sequenced ancient human genome in 2010. Initially, this research was only possible with skeletons from cold climates, where DNA preservation was more likely, but success rates have increased with the use of more cost-effective and efficient laboratory techniques that focus on the most informative parts of the genome. A major breakthrough in aDNA research has been the discovery that the petrous, the bony casing surrounding the inner ear, is a valuable source of aDNA, even in skeletons from hot climates with poor preservation. This discovery has fueled a rapid increase in aDNA studies, with thousands of individuals being sequenced every year, causing widespread interest in archaeological skeletons in museums worldwide. Dating genomes employs a method based on something geneticists call the recombination clock. The idea is that an ancient genome has undergone less change than the genomes of present-day individuals, and thus has experienced fewer recombination events since a common ancestor. It therefore becomes theoretically possible to date the appearance of new haplogroups. This science is still in its infancy, and estimates right now tend to be broad, but this process will be refined as more progress is made. The field of aDNA has brought archaeologists, historians, and geneticists together in new partnerships, where archaeologists provide the materials, historians provide the questions, and geneticists do the lab work and offer additional questions. These advancements have even challenged previous theories and are resolving long-standing debates. Another way to date past events is by linking them with natural disasters. Archaeological research on natural disasters has increased significantly since the 1970s, with archaeologists now paying more attention to the potential cultural effects of natural disasters. In the 21st century, archaeological investigations of natural disasters have become more sophisticated, and researchers have produced substantial literature on the topic. In recent years, studies stressing the impacts of past natural disasters on ancient societies have increased dramatically, although the majority of these are still authored by or inspired by natural scientists and astronomers rather than archaeologists. Nevertheless, archaeologists are invoking disasters as causes of past cultural change more and more. Now, how can this be used to date events? One effective way to establish a relationship between a sequence of events and a natural disaster is by detecting the presence of the disaster within the sequence. This event must have widespread geographical consequences and could even be global in scale. Such events are usually rare and catastrophic, such as the impact of large meteorites or large-scale volcanic eruptions. Volcanic eruptions, for example, are quite common in the archaeological record due to significant and visible consequences near the volcano, causing mud and lava flows and heavy ash falls, often leading to devastating results for human settlements. Even from intermediate distances, up to a few hundred kilometers, these events can still have significant effects, such as tsunamis and falls of volcanic ash. Accurate dating of eruptions has become possible through carbon dating, though it can be tricky, but it allows scientists to correlate the eruptions with other records, such as large earthquakes, Antarctic ice cores, climatic events, droughts and catastrophic floods, and historical events. It is important to question whether the current popularity of external natural forces in accounting for human social change in the remote past is simply a product of modern concerns, or has identified a genuinely important mechanism for change that has been relatively neglected until recently. The critical issue of correlation versus causation has rarely been satisfactorily addressed by detailed and systematic research. Too often, archaeologists and earth scientists have simply assumed that the occurrence of extreme natural events means that they were the prime movers in cultural change, without demonstrating that the latter was solely or largely dependent on the former. Okay, finally, I want to talk about astronomical dating. This is similar to dating by natural disasters, except that it connects historical events or artifacts to astronomical phenomena. The most common way to do this is through ancient written records of historical events that include descriptions of an astronomical phenomenon, and then trying to determine the timing of that phenomenon. Eclipses, for example, can be dated precisely, and they are uncommon, so an event associated with an eclipse can then be dated. An example would be the date of the Battle of Gaugamela between Alexander the Great and Darius III, which can be dated precisely to October 1st, 331 BCE, because of a lunar eclipse. This form of dating has numerous pitfalls which many researchers have fallen into. The success of this method depends on how reliable the written sources are, and how detailed and precise their astronomical observations are. Some people have attempted to date literary texts astronomically by appealing to references of astronomical events that are very loose and imprecise, or that could be metaphors. Be careful of those who treat poetic descriptions as if they were precise astronomical observations. A good way not to fall into this trap is to ask yourself questions like, does the record refer to an actual astronomical event, or is this merely my modern assumption? If it does refer to an actual astronomical event, am I looking at a primary source? Is the source reliable for that time period? Can the record provide an unambiguous date, or must I make a few unwarranted assumptions about the observational methods used at that time? Another form of astronomical dating that is rife with pitfalls is archaeoastronomy, which is used to date ancient structures according to their orientation to objects in the sky. They do this by measuring the structure's deviation from an orientation to an astronomical phenomenon, and calculating the date when the structure was built by assuming it was built when there was no such deviation. In theory, it is possible to date an archaeological site by astronomical means. All you have to do is identify the intended astronomical target of the structure, measure how far off the alignment it is pointing, and then calculate at what different times in the past the alignment would have been on. One of those times must be the time it was built. The most promising are stellar alignments because stars move the most through time due to precession. The sun and the moon to a lesser degree because they move slower. But in order for the dating to be reliable, we need corroboration that the alignment was deliberate, some reliable historical evidence that the structure is supposed to be aligned to that particular astronomical phenomenon. For example, in the case of the governor's palace at Uxmal, we have evidence, though it's not as solid as we would like, that the Venus alignment is intentional. But many people involved in archaeoastronomy do not have any evidence except for the alignment itself. Now, you might wonder why that isn't enough. First of all, we could fall into circular reasoning. Oh, the alignment must be intentional because I found the alignment. And the alignment must have been made at this time because it only works at this time. Second, it's possible to find many different alignments for a structure, not just one. Even if you take only the 15 brightest stars in the sky and a 500-year date range, you will have about a 1 in 3 chance that you'll be able to find a star and a date to fit. It's really easy. Only rarely does a single alignment at a particular monument stand out as the obvious candidate. At the very least, anyone who does archaeoastronomy must consider all possible alignments, and if they do not have corroborating evidence that the alignment is deliberate, they can only give a list of possible candidates for the alignment and possible times for the creation of the structure. I hope you enjoyed hearing about dating methods as much as I enjoyed talking about them. If you have a question that you would like answered in a video, please consider leaving a voicemail at speakpipe.com/David Miano. Thanks for watching. If you like the channel and want to help out, you can become a patron over at patreon.com/World of Antiquity.
You might like my little e-booklet, Why Ancient History Matters. It's designed to persuade people that the subject is important, even in the modern world. You might also wish to use it to help spread the word, so feel free to share it with someone you know. It's free for anyone who wants it. I've left a link in the description box below the video for you to grab a copy. Catch you later.